This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 12th of November 2019, and I am 2J.
I am Tuam.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Standard, women MPs in nasty fights over Ruto Raila. In the Star, DP Ruto, new war against handshake. And in the Daily Nation, cattle rustlers paradise. So three very different headlines.
Yes.
The Standard.
Women are fighting.
They're fighting over two men.
Yes. I don't know. This who wants to give us some context?
So in this story, they're talking about these two women groups that have emerged, right?
Yes.
The Inua Mama and the Team Embrace, and it's two women who are coming, at loggerheads together. But these members are beginning to abuse each other, and it seems at the behest of the male leaders that they identify as Ruto and Raila. So they talk about some campaigns where they've been going out and abusing each other. I'm not going to repeat what they've said, because my opinion here is that this is so not inspiring for young women.
Yeah, and I think Martha Karua has called them out.
Yeah, she has.
We're being used as puppets.
Exactly, by these men.
Counterparts.
Yeah.
The Standard is calling it bedroom politics.
Yeah, so I think we're also going to it is crass. Yeah, so I think we'll also call the Standard out for a bit of the excess of sexual innuendos.
Yes, and playing into it. Well, we do have a three-part criteria that we use. We ask ourselves. You kept very quiet.
No, I'm enjoying this headline. I love it.
Tim, is it topical or speculative?
Very topical.
Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
We've just come from bedroom wars. I think it is very topical.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna call it and I'm gonna toss it because this is not inspiring. As a young woman myself, this does not make me look at these women as models for politics.
Yeah.
So goodbye.
There we go. In the Star, DP Ruto has a new war against the handshake.
I never thought it was new. I think it's always been there. But nonetheless, I will give a context. This is a continuation from what happened during the weekend. DP Ruto went at Raila Odinga for the violence that was caused. And in Narok, him and his crew will say that they will not support BBI if BBI is actually unleashed. And I thought to myself, I said, I think right now we can say confidently the relationship between Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto is finished.
It's over. No, I'm with 2J. I think there's a swindle coming. The two will be better.
Yeah, it's too neat.
Guys, let me tell you this. The pointer was Sunday. You see, the presidential escort was already in Moranga, and there's a guy called Wanjohi who's a master of ceremonies. Always, he was there on Sunday,
and the crowd was awaiting.
Each and every symbol that signifies the arrival of the head of state was there. And then the president decides to send 3 ministers. Normally, if it was such an important event that the president was officiating, he would have sent his deputy.
If he can't attend,
If he can't attend. But he decided to send 3 ministers.
Who are these?
Machiang'i, Macharia, and Mushero.
So you're saying instead he should have sent the deputy president as his replacement?
Absolutely. And there's a reason why. It was such a loud snub, and I think the president is done completely. But
I also think part of the context of this story is that the DP is calling Raila out for not honoring the handshake.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So by having this violence that he accuses him of in Kibra, he's saying you're not honoring.
You're contradicting yourself.
Exactly, it goes against the spirit of the handshake.
And he's without a point. The handshake was constructed so that people can make peace and not fight again because of an election.
But are we saying that both sides didn't initiate violence? Do we know who initiated the violence?
We all know who initiated violence. It was in Kibra, for goodness sake.
Well, so what do you think about the headline?
I think it's not topical. I'm tired of this story. I think they're really pulling in the weekend story into the weekday. I'm tired of it.
Also perpetuated by them talking about it.
That's very true.
Right? Absolutely. So in the Daily Nation, they've taken a special report that they've been doing. It's called A Rustler's Paradise. In it, they're exploring what's going on in northern Kenya. Conflict over the Lemi Triangle, which country may or may not own it. They also go into the cattle rustling business. And basically they outline how in 2018, the value of the marketed livestock was about 155 8.4 billion shillings.
Yes.
But 1 in 4 shillings is lost to raiding.
Whoa.
So we got about 4.4 billion lost annually to just the cattle raid. So you own stock and then it's stolen from you, sold on the market. Vice versa. However, they do make a connection. They say as the demand for meat consumption has grown in Nairobi and Mombasa, conflict in the northern frontier has increased.
The shocking thing
so as you eat your steak tonight.
Just know there is a kid like this one. Look at this child. He's carrying a gun that weighs the same weight as him.
As himself, right? But a very compelling picture. I mean, they even go on to tell us how much an AK-47 goes for. There's a German gun, a G3 rifle or something like that. And how bullets go for as little as 100 shillings. So there's a definite illicit market going on there. But there's also merchants of that. They want it to continue.
Guys, I have a crazy proposal. You see, the police spend so much, the armed forces spend so much on recruitment of people throughout the country on security forces. I think they should actually just go to these areas, collect all these bandits, go and train them, because they seem to be very good with guns.
Who told you they want to join an armed forces?
They're not doing this.
If these kids have the opportunity to go to school.
This is out of necessity. Does the article not speak about how kids are even leaving schools because they're finding the cattle rustling to be more profitable than staying in school?
And now imagine telling him he's going to earn a salary of 80,000.
Oh my goodness, that is such a misguided and empty thought.
He has such a profitable opportunity to make it in life. Now he'll be watching over cattle his entire life.
Well, I like this headline.
I like the headline too.
It has a good play on gangsters' paradise, rustlers' paradise.
Exactly. And I think it lifts a veil of ignorance. You know, sometimes middle-class people who live in populated towns like Mombasa and Nairobi can feel so you're so separated from where your food comes from.
So you guys don't like my thought?
No. Thank God it's not the final thought, right?
Wow. So I think we can give this a winning headline. I agree. You're not opposed.
Yes. No, we can give it.
And there's a part 2 coming up as well from the Daily Nation.
Absolutely.
So we can
winning headline, fantastic.
Answer the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it dry or humorous? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
Welcome back, Celeste.
Celeste, I love this cartoon. And it's a cartoon, a drawing of a monkey. And the monkey is holding 2 loaded guns, pistols, and is seated very well on top of a wad of cash, covered by a blanket.
But wearing a Kebs jacket.
Wearing a Kebs jacket. And Kebs is Kenya Bureau of Standards. And he's shooting at a 2 kg packet of unga, labeled toxic unga. But the feet of the monkey are actually where the unga is. And he's shooting and he's actually getting his own food. And I like the fact that he's not captioned it. And the only caption there is cartel money.
He's sitting on cartel money.
And
fantastic.
I think it's the contradiction that Kebs has been in, which is sometimes they get into these rent-seeking activities where they taint other companies as being substandard, but yet they receive money.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that time, everything was fine.
So the context here is that they've banned some brands of maize because they have high levels of aflatoxin. So I think the point here is that they're shooting themselves in the foot because I think they were somehow maybe connected to that toxic unga.
The question is, how the hell does toxic unga get into the market before Kebs certification?
I have a theory. I think some of it wasn't even toxic.
You think this is a business was?
I think so.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Absolutely.
But I think you were making the point as well that this is a monkey with a loaded gun.
Yes.
And what should you never do? You don't give an animal a gun.
A loaded gun because it doesn't know who to shoot. It to start shooting even its owner.
Good cartoon, fella.
Absolutely.
We'll park it for now. Let's look at
the Daily Nation. Oh my God, this is fantastic. Caricatures of one Eden Dwale's ears are so huge and they look like butterfly wings, and he's covered them. And next to him is William Ruto, who's protecting himself from imminent blow-up. Next to him is a suited-up Raila Odinga in a
BBI detonation unit.
Yes, and next to him also is Uhuru Kenyatta, who's at a lower level. Next to him as well is one doctor himself, Boni Kalwale, carrying rocks, I think from Kibra. And standing behind Raila is Oscar Sudi and he's doing 12. I think he's making the...
and Raila's telling him shh.
And Kalonzo with his wiper as usual, and
Mudavadi peeking in.
Yeah, and Raila is trying to open up the BBI report with a stick because the contents could be explosive.
Yeah, and this just speaks to the anticipation. Everybody wants to know, can we just be done with it, right?
But I think
I hope it lives up to the suspense.
But I think this cartoon also tells us that everyone is fair game except for Raila and the president. They're protected from whatever the report is going to reveal.
And Ruto has no protection whatsoever.
At all.
Guys, let me ask you, are you seeing Raila's hand there?
Yeah.
Is it connected to Kalole's head?
Like he's pushing him?
So just in case it blows up, it will blow up on Kalole.
I don't think so, but a very
fantastic cartoon.
Let's see what
finally is Gado. I'm not describing that one.
Our merchant of doom. Okay, so we have a witch who looks like or is purportedly Nancy Macharia, and she's holding Nancy Macharia's list on a scroll, and she's on a TSC broom. And she looks very furious.
Yeah. Context here is that TSC and NUT are officially breaking up after coming together in 68, I believe it was. Yeah. And I think there were also some mass firings of teachers.
Yeah.
I don't know if we agree with Gado calling her a witch. I think that's a bit uncalled for.
Yeah.
Is this Hogwarts? What do they call it?
Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That's a witchcraft. We don't do that here.
Although, to be fair, I've always said this. I think as a society we need to find a better way to treat our teachers.
Yeah,
I don't know when that will ever happen. But
however,
I don't know. Gado, merchant of doom.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a dull cartoon. It's
So it's between the Nation and Celeste.
Celeste, absolutely.
I think what we were saying is that Celeste, I think compared to yesterday's cartoon, this is a great improvement.
Yes.
But we want better.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we go with Dula and the BBI detonation.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right, so he gives us our winning cartoon. What is our final?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Constitution Making from the Middle, Civil Society and Transition Politics in Kenya from 1992 to 1997. And it is authored by Willy Mutunga.
Dr.
Willy Mutunga.
Well done.
You got the title right, yeah?
Right. And I want to say some things about this man.
Go ahead.
A man that we admire at the Fort Hall School of Government.
Very much.
This man is very simple. He used to carry, as Chief Justice, used to carry a bag to work, right? No mehangos, just comes out of the car and the stairs, gets into the office, that's it. But now we have a man who demands for an S500D.
Exactly.
Mercedes.
Yeah.
But I also want to say one more thing. You see, yesterday, one Miguna said he does not want any form of mentorship from Professor Mutahi Nguni. I said that's all right. The man that he probably would need mentorship from is this man called Dr. Willy Mutunga.
Maybe he'll take up the offer, we'll see.
Let's see.
Or in case there's constitutional making in Canada. he may participate.
I think he...
Oh, gosh.
Now they'll deport him. I don't know what they'll deport him to.
Yeah. Okay, so let me bring us back, right? Constitution Making from the Middle, Civil Society and Transition Politics in Kenya from 1992 to 1997, written by Dr. Willy Mutunga in 1999. So just a bit of history before we get into this book. Dr. Willy Mutunga was the 13th Supreme Court Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. We've had quite a few, but as a republic, he was our 13th. So he received both his Bachelor and Masters of Law from the University of Dar es Salaam, and then later he came back to teach at the University of Nairobi, and he was the first indigenous Kenyan to teach constitutional law at the university level, which is quite a feat. And so as a lecturer, Mutunga became an activist, and he was anti-Kenyatta and then later anti-Moi, and this led to his arrest in 1997. And then eventually he went into exile in 1983 in Canada. And while in Canada, this is when we see the birth of the KNHRC, the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. And then eventually it did make its way back home. And so upon Kenya's return to multi-party politics in 1992, Mutunga and others who were in exile eventually begin to return back home. And I'll just skip forward because later in 2011, we know this, after much controversy, the earring and other strange, conversations, Mutunga was appointed to the position of Chief Justice. However, this book comes way before any of that conversation happens in 1999. And so just with a bit of a summary, this book is about the potential and also the limits of civil society in promoting political and constitutional change in Kenya.
Yes.
So just take us a step back.
Yes.
Who and what is civil society?
Fantastic.
So civil society, if we take a bit of theoretical definition, civil society is the space between the state and the family. It's what occupies that space in between. And it refers to a wide array of organizations. So you have community groups, NGOs, labor unions, indigenous groups, charitable organizations, faith-based groups, and more.
Yes.
And it's important to note that the civil society is identified as non-state movements. They can be co-opted by the state, yes, but they identify as being non-state related.
Absolutely.
And often they have the power to influence and influence the actions of policymakers and the government as well.
Yes.
So this book is looking at how the civil society engaged in constitutional making conversation. And it tells of how the Kenyan middle class rose to defy the rule of Moi in the early 1990s to bring about the conversation about constitutional reform to the forefront. And so Dr. Mutunga starts with the assumption, number one, that there is a process of constitution making from above and there is constitution making from below. And so the one from above is state driven, but the one from below is popular and it is people serving. And I think we've had examples of that in Kenya in the past year, have we not?
Absolutely.
And then he also adds that constitution making from the middle, which is what this book is titled after, in this case was led by the civil society. Specifically, the Citizens Coalition for Constitutional Change, which was later called or referred to as the 4 Cs. And so Mutunga argues in this book that the constitution that was given to us upon independence was not suitable for Kenyans because it was imposed upon us from the state, from above.
Absolutely.
And therefore it left out the civil society and it left out the people at the bottom. And so I guess this is why we begin to see these tensions in the early 1990s around excessive executive power, because we're seeing a disconnect between the state and the people. And so the 4 Cs grew out of several groupings of civil society who were pursuing social and political change. And eventually they take a lot of credit for the end of the oppressive single-party rule in Kenya in '92. However, the change ushered in by the 4 Cs was a middle-class project. That is what Mutunga's thesis is. And as he puts it, their agenda was completely different to those of the people at the bottom. In his view, it is completely unacceptable that constitution-making initiatives should stay in the middle class. But at the same time, he rightly acknowledges that at the time, the Moi regime had a complete monopoly on the access to the grassroots people. And this was through oppressive laws, through violence, and through intimidation. So really, finding a way to connect with the grassroots was very difficult, which he says is critical for constitution making. And so I guess we end with this question. Was constitutional making from the middle doomed to fail? Right? And I guess we can ask another bunch of questions. Is therefore the key for the success of constitutional reform, one, a classless civil society, so not a middle class, not an upper class, not a middle class, or is its success based on grassroots-led initiatives?
Fantastic
I don't
rendition.
know.
I've never seen you summarize a book like that.
Wow. No, it was really interesting. And I think what he goes on then to describe in chapter 6 is how the 4 Cs become the NCPC, which is the National Convention Preparatory Committee. So this thing was, how do we get constitutional review going and have it broad-based? But however, broad-based, but to do with the civil society mostly, right? So what is a national convention? It is not a coup as per the French tradition, right? It is using existing government to facilitate the process of constitutional review, but having government implement those decisions when they're at the table. Now, what happens when government refuses to join you at this table? And this is the setting of NCPC in the run-up to the 1997 election. And the Moi Kanu regime is refusing to play ball. Right? So the NCPC believed that there should be some implementation of reforms. And because the regime at the time is playing hardball, they decide that they can at least just push for minimal reforms. And these minimal reforms was A, to reform the Electoral Commission of Kenya. It was to allow the formation of coalition government, repeal some public orders, reform the National Assembly and the presidential election as well. Now they thought that if they do the minimum, then it'll pave way for more comprehensive reforms, right? But then now increasingly NCPC, which was 4C, which is the civil society, is increasingly being given 0 options. So Moi and the Kanu new regime are basically cannibalizing the grassroots, as you've said. And NCPC didn't have a grassroots structure of their own. And then they have the church organizations. So you have the NCCK. The Episcopal Conference, who are sitting on the fence. They don't want to make the current regime mad, but they also don't want to be part of what they deem to be a very important conversation. So you find that when they have their first plenaries, they send representatives, right? And so you have a lot of this commitment, but not enough. And then within the opposition party, so one of the things the NCPC had said was, listen, we will boycott the 1997 election, despite getting multi-partyism. We will boycott it if we don't get our minimal reforms. But still, with the opposition, there's division. Mwai Kibaki says, no way, I'm boycotting. I just gotten the chance to run. And then you have Matiba saying, Wadasili is not running in that election. So you have constant contradictions within the alliances of the 4C, the NCPC. But there are weaknesses in the approach that Dr. Willie Otunga highlights in the book. He says that the premise of this constitutional change was analytical rather than mobilizing. So he says there was a need to relate the constitution to content and context. But in the way that they were doing it, they were just approaching it about process and procedure. And so it was not connecting with the average Kenyan who was worried about their daily needs and all that stuff. I don't know how true that is and whether it's one perspective, because the regime at the time was very, oppressive, or can be called that, right? And the reality, he points out in this book, is that constitutional making is a political process. And he says it is a management of political power it's the management of political power as its central feature, and that's what that contestation will be. It will never be the people at the bottom. It is unfortunately the middle, the elite, who will control that conversation. Then he says it begs a question about whether we should always create a crisis. So this precipitating a crisis in order to bring the regime to the table. So constantly NCPC felt that they had zero option. And so in the next chapter he discusses mass action. Because the regime at the time has not come to the table. What do we do? You've been left with no point, with no options. And so they start to consider what they call a civilian coup.
Oh, wow.
So it had lots of food for thought.
Definitely.
Definitely many things to consider.
Dr. Willie Otunga was a very gracious man. And when he wrote this book, he asked a group of foremost political scientists to come and peer review this book. And
which very few do.
Very few people do that. And on number one on that list was Anyang' Nyong'o, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. Second on that list was Irungo Houghton. I don't know whether you people know Irungo is a pointy guy. And then third is Professor Mamdani. And third, our very own Oracle himself, Professor Mutahingunyi.
You're looking for a bonus for Christmas?
I think so.
We are getting one.
Someone is working overtime.
And a promotion.
And so that is a chapter you're focusing on?
This is what I'm doing.
I thought that was the end. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
But what I actually took from this book is Prof's critique of this book. And he said, one of his central theses is this book did not take much into account. When they're making constitutions, they did not take much into account this thing called class analysis. And he says there's this thing called the middle class, that the government likes to compromise. That even within that relationship and dynamic, the middle class and the lumpens, and I was told there's a difference between poor people and lumpens. Lumpens earn a wage, they're earners of wages. They're the same as proletariats. Peasants actually do subsistence farming. Now, the middle class and the lumpens do have a tacit agreement in constitutional making. And he says the reason there is a compromise, or the reason the government compromises the middle class, is because the middle class in itself is actually weak. And allow me to read some of Professor's general remarks on the book itself. He says, Otunga has clearly shown how the middle class is mobilized into politics without getting socialized by politics, and how it mobilizes for politics within the confines of weak institutional structures, leading to high political expectations and low realization. Right? But another thing that I think Dr. William Otunga should have included in the book is the stories just around the second liberation. And Prof tells us a story of the people that are called the mothers of political prisoners. Now, the mothers of political prisoners are mothers of those people that Moi had detained. And allow me to read some of the names because I think they're very important. One is a lady called Monica Wago Wamwere. It's a mother to Koigyo Wamwere. The second is Milka Wanjiro Kinovia, mother to Rumba Kinovia, and her daughter, though actually compensating 1.5 million shillings after they took government to court. Third is Gladys Dhitu Kariuki, and this is the mother to the late Mirugi Kariuki, I think former Nakuru Town MP. And the last one on this is Leah Wanjiro Mungai, mother to Kangeda Mungai, who I believe is now deceased.
So they came together?
They came together and they formed this thing, Mothers of Political Prisoners. Now, a story is told that they used to protest and they went on hunger strike to protest against the detainment and detaining of their sons. Now, to prove their point, they went to All Saints Cathedral and they camped there and were on hunger strike. But they always used to have one meal a day. Now, the special branch then, as constituted and was known, knew that these guys, these old women used to go to a place in town to eat some chips. And one day, these ladies had actually planned to block Moi as he's coming down from State House, down, I think, opposite All Saints Cathedral, and going all the way to town. Now, the plan was to block him there and force Moi to actually release their sons. Now, special branch got wind of this plan. And they actually went to the place where these ladies had chips. And the Warus were there. They went to the guy who fries the chips, and they gave him some substance called, is it laxative? Laxatives. And they poured on the fryers, and the chips are boiling, you know. Chips are boiling and fries are coming out nicely. And these ladies, because they knew Moi's schedule, they went to have chips in this place. And they went and they fed, and they went back to All Saints Cathedral to eat for one Daniel Arap Moi. But guys, little by little, one stomach after another started churning. And they decided that they're going to take refuge.
Are you suggesting that Dr. William Otunga should have tainted his book with a story like that?
Imagine.
So let me finish the story. The ladies went
doing so well up until this point. The
ladies went to seek refuge for their churning stomachs at All Saints Cathedral. Now, Moi was, the administration, special branch was very bad, but they're also very effective in cancelling out a lot of these protests.
Are you done? Can I bring us back?
Bring us back, please.
I want to point out the 4 Cs had a group called the 5 Cs. And the 5 Cs, which is thought was very genius, used the arts to get their message across. How did they reach grassroots? One of their ways was to have these plays in Kiswahili and sort of get the message out about constitutional change. So when you couldn't get on a very strict media or media that was unfair against you, that's what they did.
Use the arts. And I think that you were likening that to the recent Tomboya play, where you're seeing people being very vocal about how they feel about government and and their country. And I think we also talk about how civil society is dead in Kenya.
Or rather silent.
Okay, silent.
They need to be bought for bundles.
The handshake killed it.
So on a day where we had a double win for the Daily Nation, Cattle Rustlers Paradise, and a cartoon from Dula, I want to leave you with this. In the end, a constitution is not a mere lawyer's document. It is a vehicle of life, and its spirit is always the spirit of the age. So let's not be as afraid as Kenyans of changing the constitution. Let's change it till we get it right.
Agreed.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pan Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a good weekend. Have a good day.
Night. Evening. Bless.